Part 1. Dr. Sarah stood at the entrance of the massive conference room and tried not to feel small. The room was bigger than any building she had seen on Earth. The ceiling stretched so high above her that she could barely see it. Hundreds of aliens from dozens of different worlds filled the seats. Some floated in special zero-gravity bubbles. Others sat in chairs that looked like they were made for giants. A few tiny creatures no bigger than her hand perched on elevated platforms so others could see them. This was the Galactic Science Symposium, and Sarah was the only human here. The conference was being held on a ship called the Celestial Harmony. It was a neutral meeting place in deep space where different species could gather without favoring anyone's home world. The ship was enormous, almost like a small city floating among the stars. It had taken Sarah 3 weeks to travel here from Earth, and she had spent most of that time preparing her presentation. Sarah walked down the aisle toward the stage. Her boots made soft thuds on the floor. She noticed a few aliens turn to look at her. Their faces were hard to read since they were so different from humans, but she got the feeling they were not impressed. She had felt this way since she arrived 2 days ago. The other scientists were polite but distant. They treated her like she was from a backward planet that had nothing interesting to offer. Maybe they were right to think that way. Earth had only joined the galactic community 15 years ago. These other species had been exploring space for thousands of years. Some had technology that seemed like magic to human eyes. Others came from worlds so strange that Sarah could barely imagine what it would be like to grow up there. The moderator, a tall being with 6 arms and skin that shimmered like oil on water, gestured for Sarah to approach the stage. "Our next presentation comes from Earth," the moderator said in a flat voice. The translation device in Sarah's ear made the words sound bored. "Dr. Sarah will discuss human physiology and engineering approaches." Sarah climbed the steps to the stage. The gravity here was set to .8 standard, which meant Earth's gravity but slightly lighter. It felt a little strange, like walking on a soft carpet. She reached the podium and placed her bag down. From the bag, she pulled out her tablet and a few other items, including her pen. The screen behind her lit up with her first slide. It showed Earth rotating slowly, with information about the planet's size, atmosphere, and gravity displayed beside it. "Thank you for having me," Sarah began. "I want to talk about how Earth's environment shaped human development and how that influences the way we build things." She clicked to the next slide, which showed a diagram of human bone structure. Earth has a gravity of 1 standard g. This means that from the moment we are born until the moment we die, we are constantly being pulled toward the ground with the same force. Every step we take, every movement we make, happens under this constant pull. A sound rippled through the audience. It took Sarah a moment to realize it was laughter. She felt her face grow warm but continued. "This constant gravity shaped our bodies. Our bones are dense and strong. Our muscles are built to work against this pull all day, every day. Our hearts pump blood upward against gravity. Even our inner ear contains special organs that tell us which way is down, so we don't fall over." More laughter. Someone in the front row, a being that looked like a cross between a bird and a jellyfish, was shaking so hard that its translucent body rippled. "Our gravity shaped our technology too," Sarah pressed on. "Everything we build has to account for this constant downward force. Tables have to support weight. Buildings need foundations. Vehicles need strong frames. We call this structural integrity, and it is the foundation of all human engineering." A voice called out from the audience. Sarah's translator identified the speaker as Ambassador, a representative from the people. They were tall and thin, with long limbs and graceful movements. They came from a moon with only .4 standard gravity. "A prison," said his voice smooth and amused. "You describe a prison, Doctor. Your species evolved in chains, forever pulled down, unable to move with grace or freedom. How sad." Other voices joined in agreement. Sarah saw a delegate from the Empire shaking his massive head. They came from a heavy world with 2.1G weak, the rumbled. 1G is nothing. Your bones would snap on my home world. You call yourselves adapted. You are soft. Sarah took a deep breath. Every environment creates different adaptations. Humans are not weak or imprisoned. We are balanced. We exist in a middle range that required us to develop specific solutions. Middle range means unremarkable, another voice called out. Neither strong nor agile, neither tough nor graceful, just average, mediocre. The laughter was louder now. Sarah felt something tight forming in her chest. She had expected skepticism, but this felt like mockery. These beings looked at humanity and saw nothing special, nothing worth respecting. She clicked to her next slide, which showed various human structures. Bridges, buildings, spacecraft. Because of our gravity, humans learn to over-engineer everything. We add extra support. We build redundant systems. We assume that stress and strain are constant, not occasional. This is our advantage. What we build lasts. Advantage stood up from his seat. His thin body swayed as he moved like a reed in water. You call it advantage to waste materials, to add unnecessary mass, to make everything heavy and clumsy because you cannot imagine a world without your precious pull. He gestured around the room. Look at this ship. The celestial harmony uses variable gravity zones, different areas set to different levels. We can accommodate everyone because we are not trapped by one way of thinking. Your species builds everything for 1G because you know nothing else. That is not fair, Sarah said, and she hated how defensive she sounded. We build for the environment we know, just like everyone else. But your environment is so limiting, continued. He was enjoying this, Sarah realized. The other delegates were watching with interest now. Tell me, Doctor, what happens on your world when you drop something, when you let go of an object? It falls, Sarah said. Exactly, spread his arms wide. It falls, constantly, relentlessly. You cannot set something down without it slamming into the surface below. You cannot place an object in midair and expect it to stay. Everything must rest on something else. Everything must be supported every single moment. What a tedious existence. On my world, continued, warming to his subject, I can place a tool in the air while I work. It floats there, waiting for me. I can push an object gently and it drifts to where I need it. We move with efficiency and grace. We do not fight against an invisible hand pulling us down every moment of every day. The delegate spoke up again. On my world, we are strong enough that gravity is barely a concern. We lift with ease what would crush your human bodies. Your middle ground makes you neither clever like the low-G species nor powerful like us. What is your advantage? Sarah felt the words forming before she could stop them. Our advantage is that we understand both. But even as she said it, she knew it sounded weak. The room was filled with beings who thought humans had nothing special to offer. They looked at Earth's gravity and saw only limitation. She tried to continue her presentation, but the mood had shifted. When she talked about human safety standards, someone muttered that humans must be very fragile to need so many precautions. When she discussed load-bearing calculations, another voice said it must be exhausting to always worry about things falling. When she showed pictures of human spacecraft with their reinforced floors and secured equipment, actually laughed out loud. Imagine, he said to the delegates sitting near him, building a spaceship and worrying about the floor breaking, as if the crew will drop something so heavy it damages the structure. How paranoid. Sarah reached the end of her presentation earlier than planned. She had cut out several sections because it was clear no one was interested. The moderator thanked her with the same flat, bored tone and asked if there were any questions. There were no questions. Sarah gathered her things quickly. She wanted to leave the stage with some dignity intact. As she picked up her tablet, her pen rolled slightly on the podium. Without thinking, she reached for it, but her hand bumped it instead. The pen fell off the edge of the podium. It dropped through the pointate G of the conference room and hit the stage floor with a sharp, clear clang. The sound rang out across the quiet room. Several aliens actually jumped at the noise. A few made sounds of alarm. Sarah bent down and picked up her pen. It was completely undamaged. She held it up so the light caught its metallic surface. "This is a standard human pen," she said quietly, but her voice carried in the silent room. "It is made of solid titanium. We make our pens from metal because on Earth we drop things, all the time, constantly. And when something drops on Earth, it hits the ground hard. So we build even our smallest tools to survive the impact." She looked at the pen in her hand, then at the audience. Hundreds of alien faces stared back at her. Some looked confused, others looked amused, was smiling. "You can have it," Sarah said suddenly. She walked to the edge of the stage and held out the pen to. "Keep it as a souvenir. Something to remember the humans and their prison gravity. Something to show your friends when you talk about the species that has to build everything to survive a fall." Stood and walked to the stage. He took the pen from Sarah's hand. It looked heavy in his long, thin fingers. "Thank you, Doctor," he said, and his smile was not kind. "I will treasure this reminder of your world's limitations." Sarah picked up her bag and walked off the stage. She did not look back at the audience. She did not wait for the moderator to dismiss her. She just walked up the aisle, through the huge doors, and out into the corridor beyond. Behind her, she heard the buzz of conversation starting up again. She heard laughter. She heard his voice saying something about primitive tools for primitive people. But Sarah was smiling slightly as she walked away, because had taken the pen. He was going to keep it, and that was exactly what she had hoped for. In her bag, Sarah had 17 more pens exactly like it. Standard issue for human scientists. Each one made of solid titanium. Each one designed to survive being dropped 1,000 times on a 1G world where everything that falls hits hard. She wondered how long it would take for her to understand what that meant. Part 2. 3 weeks after the conference, Ambassador stood in the main exhibition hall of the Celestial Harmony and felt the excitement running through his long limbs. Today was his day. Today he would show all these other species what engineering could truly accomplish. The exhibition hall was even larger than the conference room. It had a high ceiling with transparent panels that showed the stars beyond. The walls curved gracefully, and the lighting was soft and pleasant. Hundreds of delegates had gathered to see various demonstrations of new technology from across the galaxy, but knew his demonstration would be the most impressive. In the center of the hall, his team had installed the prototype. It looked simple, just a circular platform about 20 meters across. The surface was smooth and dark, made from metamaterials that seemed to absorb light. Around the edges, almost invisible, were the gravity field generators. They used quantum-locked matrices to create and control gravitational forces. This was the adaptive gravity deck. It could change gravity across its entire surface instantly. No zones, no barriers, no limitations. One moment it could be 0G, the next moment it could be 3G smooth transitions. Perfect control. It was technology that would revolutionize space travel. Ships would no longer need separate sections for different species. Everyone could share the same space, and the floor beneath them would adjust to their comfort. Had worked on this project for 5 years. It was his life's greatest achievement. The moderator called for attention. The crowd quieted down, stepped onto the platform, and his team activated the system at 0.5G, his home world's gravity. He felt immediately comfortable, his body moving with the grace he was born with. "Honored delegates," began, his voice amplified to reach the entire hall. "Today I present the future of multi-species cooperation. For too long, we have been limited by our different gravity requirements. We have needed separate zones, separate quarters, separate facilities. This has kept us apart. This has made us less than we could be together." He gestured to the deck beneath his feet. "This adaptive gravity deck solves that problem completely. Watch." Nodded to his technician. The gravity on the deck shifted to one standard. G felt himself become slightly heavier, his movements requiring more effort. Then it shifted to 1.5 G. He bent his knees to compensate, feeling the pull. Then back to 0.5 G. The transitions were instant and smooth. No disorientation, no discomfort, just seamless adjustment. The crowd murmured with approval, smiled. The applications are endless, he continued. Imagine a ship where every room can adjust to whoever enters it. Imagine a space station where and then can stand side by side in comfort. Imagine diplomatic meetings where no one is at a disadvantage because of the gravity setting. He walked across the deck, demonstrating how natural his movement was. The deck reads the preferences of those standing on it. It can create different gravity zones if needed or maintain one uniform field. It can shift gradually for comfort or rapidly for emergency situations. It is, quite simply, revolutionary. Looked out at the audience and found Doctor. The human was standing near the back, watching quietly. Their eyes met, felt a small surge of satisfaction. Let the human see what real advanced engineering looked like. Let her understand how far beyond Earth the rest of the galaxy had progressed. Some species, said, not quite looking at Sarah but making sure she heard, are trapped by their environments. They build everything to accommodate one fixed condition, one gravity level, one way of thinking. He spread his arms. We have overcome such primitive limitations. We shape gravity itself to our will. The demonstration continued, brought volunteers onto the deck, who needed high gravity, and who preferred almost none. A species that lived most comfortably at 0.7 G, the deck accommodated them all, creating subtle gradient zones so each being felt the gravity they preferred. It was like magic, but it was science. The delegates were impressed, could see it in their faces, hear it in their conversations. This was his triumph. This was his moment. He decided to end with a flourish. He would demonstrate the deck's rapid response capability. The ability to shift gravity quickly was important for emergency situations. If a ship were damaged and gravity systems failed, the deck could compensate instantly. If different species needed to move quickly through an area, the gravity could adapt to them in real time. Reached into his coat pocket for his presentation remote. His fingers touched something else instead, something cylindrical and heavy. He pulled it out. Doctor's pen. He had been carrying it for 3 weeks, sometimes showing it to other delegates when they gathered socially. Look at this, he would say. The humans make their writing tools from solid metal. They are so weighed down by gravity that even their pens must be built like tools. Is it not amusing? Now, standing on his triumph, had an idea, a perfect ending to his demonstration. He held up the pen so the light caught its titanium surface. This, he announced, is a human pen. It was given to me by Doctor of Earth. It is made of solid titanium because humans live under such oppressive gravity that their objects must be built to survive constant falling. He saw Sarah in the crowd. Her face showed no expression. Watch what happens in a civilized environment, said. He set the deck to 0.5 G, his comfortable home gravity. Then he tossed the pen upward with a casual flick. The pen rose slowly, gracefully, tumbling gently through the air. It was beautiful. It demonstrated perfectly the difference between the heavy, oppressive pull of Earth and the gentle, civilized conditions that advanced species preferred. But wanted to show more. He wanted to demonstrate the rapid transition capability. He wanted to show how the deck could shift from low to high gravity in an instant. As the pen reached the top of its arc and began to fall slowly down, activated the rapid shift. The deck jumped from 0.5 G to 2.5 G in a fraction of a second. The pen stopped falling slowly. Instead, it dropped like a stone, like a bullet, like a meteor. Saw it happening but could not process it fast enough. The pen fell through the higher gravity with acceleration that seemed impossible. It hit the deck surface directly in front of him. The sound was terrible. Not a clang or a clink, but a sharp, violent crack. The pen bounced once, leaving a mark on the deck's surface. And from that mark, something spread. Fractures. Hairline cracks racing outward across the metamaterial like lightning frozen in black crystal. They spread so fast that could barely track them with his eyes. Alarms began screaming. Red lights flashed throughout the hall. The deck shuddered, stumbled, suddenly feeling the gravity beneath him surge. 2.5G became 3G, then it dropped to 0.2G, and he almost flew off his feet. Then it jumped again. The quantum-locked matrix was failing. The gravity generators were losing synchronization. The entire system was collapsing. "Everyone off the deck," someone shouted, could not tell who. He tried to run, but the gravity kept shifting. One moment he was heavy, barely able to move. The next moment he was light, his steps sending him bouncing. He fell to his knees. The deck's surface under his hands felt wrong, like it was vibrating at frequencies he could not hear but could feel in his bones. Emergency systems activated. Force fields snapped into existence around the deck, containing the failure. Backup gravity generators in the rest of the hall stabilized. But on the deck itself, the gravitational field was chaos. 0G in one spot, 4G in another, shifting and changing with no pattern. Crawled, the deck surface was cracking more now, actual physical breaks in the metamaterial. The quantum matrix had been the structural support. Without it, the advanced materials were failing. They had been engineered to handle careful, controlled forces. They had never been designed for impact. Why would they be? What impacts existed in space? In 0G or low-G environments, nothing fell hard. Objects drifted. Collisions were gentle. There was no need to build floors that could handle objects dropping with force. Except on worlds like Earth. Strong hands grabbed under the arms. Security personnel in protective suits pulled him off the deck and through the force field barrier. He collapsed on the solid floor of the exhibition hall, gasping. Around him, other delegates were being evacuated. The who had been on the deck was roaring in pain, having experienced the random gravity shifts at his massive body weight. The was unconscious, her delicate frame unable to handle the stress. Medical teams rushed in. Engineers surrounded the deck shouting readings at each other. The gravity fluctuations were decreasing but still dangerous. They would need to shut down the entire system. Carefully, slowly, any mistake could make it worse. Lay on the floor and stared at the disaster he had created. His life's work, 5 years of research, the prototype that would have changed everything, destroyed in seconds. By a pen. His hand was still clenched. He opened it slowly. There, resting in his palm, was the titanium pen. It had a small scratch on one end where it hit the deck. Otherwise, it was perfect, undamaged, unchanged. Someone crouched next to. He looked up and saw Doctor. Her face was calm. Not angry, not smug, just calm. "The metamaterials," whispered. "They failed. The quantum matrix broke. How?" "Impact," Sarah said simply. "Your deck was never designed to handle impact loading. Why would it be? In low gravity, nothing falls hard. In 0G, nothing falls at all. You engineered for static loads, dynamic loads, gradual transitions, but not impacts." "But it was just a pen," said, hearing how pathetic he sounded. "A pen that weighs 0.3 kilograms, Sarah said, falling through 2.5 standard gravities. Do you know what the impact force was? About 50 newtons, not much by human standards. We drop things that hard hundreds of times a day. Our floors handle it. Our tables handle it. Our structures are built assuming constant impacts, large and small, forever." She reached down and gently took the pen from his hand. "On Earth, everything falls, constantly, every moment, every object, every tool, every piece of equipment. And when things fall, they hit. Hard. So we learned over thousands of years of evolution and hundreds of years of engineering that the world hits back. We build everything knowing it will be dropped, knowing it will be bumped, knowing it will be stressed in sudden, violent ways." Watched her stand up. "I don't understand," he said. "You knew this would happen." No, Sarah said honestly. I didn't know, but I hoped you would learn what humanity learned a long time ago. That gravity is not just a force that pulls. It is a force that makes things matter. It makes everything we drop into a test, into a lesson, into a reminder that the universe does not care about our elegant theories and our beautiful materials. It only cares about physics. She looked at the ruined deck where engineers were slowly powering down the failing systems. You mocked Earth's pull, you called it a prison, but it taught us something you never learned. It taught us that fall is not just a direction, it is an event, and events have consequences. Sarah put the pen in her pocket. You can keep this one too if you want, but I think you understand now why we make them from titanium. She walked away, leaving sitting on the floor surrounded by the debris of his greatest failure. The pen had weighed 0.3 kilograms, such a small thing, such a tiny object, but it had fallen with the force of a hammer and it had broken the future. Part 3. 6 months later, Ambassador sat in the council chambers on his home moon and reviewed the reports coming in from across known space. Each report told the same story. Each one described another failure. Each one mentioned humans. The incidents had started small. On a low-gravity mining station, a worker dropped a wrench. The wrench fell through the station's 0.6G environment and punched straight through a floor panel. The panel was made from advanced composites, light and strong enough to support distributed weight, not strong enough to handle a metal tool hitting it with sudden force. The breach triggered a cascade failure in the life support systems. 3 workers died before emergency systems could seal the section. On a diplomatic station near the home world, a child threw a toy. Just playing, just a small throwing motion in the low-G environment. The toy sailed through the air and hit a transparent viewport. The viewport was made from crystal polymers, clear and beautiful and rated to hold back vacuum, but it had never been tested against impact loading. The viewport cracked, slowly at first, then faster. They evacuated the section in time, but it was close. On a cargo vessel using gravity deck technology, a loading container broke free from its restraints. The container weighed 2 tons. It fell through a gravity field set to 1.2 G when it hit the deck. The deck collapsed. The container fell through 3 more deck levels before the ship's emergency systems could stop it. The vessel survived, but it would never fly again. The repair costs exceeded the ship's entire value. The reports kept coming. Every day more incidents, different species, different locations, but always the same cause. Something fell, something hit, something broke. Because nothing in the wider galaxy was built to handle impacts. Had spent 6 months investigating. At first he thought the deck failure was unique, a flaw in his design. But as he dug deeper, consulting with engineers from dozens of species, he discovered the truth. The problem was universal. Species that evolved in low gravity never experienced significant falling force. They developed technology for environments where objects drifted gently. They built structures that handled compression, tension, shear stress, but never sudden impacts. They had no reason to. Falling barely existed in their world. Species that evolved in high gravity built everything strong enough to hold massive weights. They could construct buildings that would last forever, vehicles that could handle incredible stress. But they never considered rapid gravity changes with loose objects. They never thought about what happens when something heavy is lifted and then suddenly the lifting stops. When support fails. When things drop in high gravity environments, they drop through static systems. The floors are strong enough. Always. Humanity was different. Humans evolved at 1 standard G heavy enough that objects carried real energy when they fell, light enough that humans could still lift, carry, and manipulate tools. They existed in a range where falling was both common and dangerous, where every dropped object was a potential hazard, where gravity was not something you adapted to once, but something you fought against constantly, every day, in every action. It made them unique. The council chamber doors opened and stood to greet the arriving delegates. The emergency Galactic Engineering Summit had been called 3 weeks ago after the seventh major incident. 23 species had sent representatives, and they had all requested that humans be present. Dr. Sarah entered the chamber wearing a simple suit. She carried a bag over her shoulder. She looked tired, thought. She had probably been traveling constantly, consulting with engineering teams across the galaxy. Doctors said formally, "Thank you for coming." "Ambassador," Sarah replied with a small nod, "I received the Council's message. I understand there have been problems." "Problems," repeated, and he could not keep the bitterness from his voice. "That is an understatement." The other delegates took their seats. The moderator called the session to order, stood to present the findings. "Over the past 6 months," he began, "we have documented 47 major structural failures across galactic space. These failures have resulted in 17 deaths, hundreds of injuries, and property damage exceeding 4 billion standard credits. Additionally, there have been more than 300 minor incidents that did not result in casualties but could have." He pulled up a display showing the galaxy with red dots marking each incident location. "The failures are not localized. They affect multiple species, multiple technologies, multiple environments, but they all share one thing in common." Paused and forced himself to say it. "They all involve impacts, objects striking surfaces with force, and they all involve structures that were not designed to handle such impacts." A delegate from the Empire leaned forward. His massive frame made the chair beneath him look small. "This is absurd," he rumbled. "Our structures are strong enough to hold mountains. How can they fail from a falling object?" "Because your structures are designed for static loads," Sarah said quietly from her seat. "Weight that pushes down constantly. But when something falls in high gravity and hits suddenly, that is dynamic loading. The force is not distributed over time. It strikes all at once. Even strong materials can fracture under dynamic loading if they are not designed for it." And Delegate spoke, her voice like wind chimes. "And for us, we build for lightness and efficiency. We have never needed to consider impacts because in our environment, falls are gentle, objects drift to rest." "Exactly," Sarah said. "Every species engineered for their environment. Low-G species never experienced dangerous falls. High-G species built everything so strong they never worried about falls. Humanity is the only species that evolved in a range where falling was both common and dangerous. We are the only ones who spent thousands of years learning that when things drop, they break. Either the falling object breaks, or the thing it hits breaks, or both." Brought up the next display. It showed engineering schematics for a human spacecraft. "This is a standard human cargo vessel," he said. "Note the deck structure. It is not simply strong. It is reinforced specifically to handle impact loading. The human engineers assume that cargo will be dropped, that tools will fall, that objects will strike the deck with force. They design for it." He pulled up another schematic. "This is a human space station. Every floor has impact dampening layers. Every surface is rated for sudden stress. Every transparent panel is tested against projectile impact. The humans call these safety factors, and they apply them to everything they build." "It seems inefficient," a delegate observed. "Adding all that extra material and structure, the mass penalty alone must be significant." "Yes," Sarah agreed. "Human spacecraft are heavier than equivalent vessels from other species. Our structures use more material. Our construction costs are higher. But our infrastructure does not fail when someone drops something." The room was silent for a long moment. Looked at the gathered delegates and saw understanding dawning on their faces. Understanding and something else. Embarrassment. They had mocked humanity's engineering as primitive, excessive, paranoid. And now they needed it. "We need human help," said, and the words hurt to speak. "We need to learn how to engineer for impact resistance. We need to retrofit our existing structures. We need to redesign our safety standards. And we do not know how to do it. Humanity does." Sarah stood slowly. She walked to the front of the chamber and set her bag down on the display table. From the bag, she pulled out a large tablet and activated it. Documents appeared in the air, floating above the table where everyone could see them. 6 months ago, Sarah said, after the incident on the Celestial Harmony, Earth's Engineering Council anticipated this problem. We started preparing documentation, safety standards, design principles, testing methodologies, material specifications, everything we know about building for impact resistance. She gestured to the floating documents, hundreds of them, thousands of pages. This is our contribution, free to any species that needs it. No cost, no conditions, just the accumulated knowledge of a species that learned the hard way that gravity is not your friend. It is a constant test and you must design for it. A delegate leaned forward, reading the document titles. This is comprehensive. These specifications cover everything from deck plating to viewport materials to cargo securing systems. This must represent centuries of development. It does, Sarah confirmed. Every one of these standards was written in blood, in accidents, in failures, in lessons learned when something fell and someone got hurt. We do not want other species to pay the same price we did. But why? Asked. We mocked you. We dismissed your engineering as primitive. We laughed at your gravity prison. Why help us now? Sarah looked at him and her expression was complicated. Not angry, but not entirely kind either. Because people are dying, she said simply. Because children are getting hurt. Because stations are failing and ships are crashing. We can be angry about disrespect, or we can prevent disasters. We chose to prevent disasters. She pulled something else from her bag, a titanium pen. She held it up so everyone could see. This pen weighs 0.3 kilograms. I have dropped it on metal floors, concrete surfaces, composite decks, and stone ground. Hundreds of times, maybe thousands. It has a few scratches. Otherwise, it is fine. That is because it was designed knowing it would be dropped. Sarah set the pen down on the table with a soft click. Everything humans make is designed that way, knowing it will be stressed, knowing it will be tested, knowing that gravity never stops pulling and accidents never stop happening. That is our advantage, not strength, not cleverness, just painful experience. The summit continued for 3 more days. Human engineers presented detailed information about impact-resistant design. They explained concepts like dynamic loading, stress concentrations, and failure modes. They showed videos of tests, demonstrating how materials could be strong under static loads but fail catastrophically under impacts. They also brought warnings. Retrofitting existing structures was not simple. The adaptive gravity deck technology had a fundamental flaw. It could not be fixed with patches or upgrades. The entire system needed to be redesigned from the foundation up. The metamaterials had to be replaced with composites that could handle both static elegance and dynamic violence. It would take years, it would cost fortunes, but it was necessary. Ambassador found Sarah on the last day of the summit, standing alone in an observation corridor looking out at the stars. "Doctor," he said quietly, "I owe you an apology." Sarah turned. "For what?" "For mocking you, for dismissing human engineering, for thinking that because Earth's gravity was mundane, humanity had nothing to teach us." "You were not completely wrong," Sarah said. "Earth's gravity is mundane. It is just 1G, nothing special, nothing extreme. But that ordinariness created a specific problem set, and we solved it. That is what engineering is, solving problems." "We created a different problem," said. "We were so focused on elegance and efficiency that we forgot to account for chaos, for accidents, for the reality that not everything goes according to plan." "That is a lesson Earth learned early," Sarah agreed. "We have a saying, Murphy's Law, if something can go wrong, it will. So you design assuming everything will go wrong eventually. You prepare for the worst and hope for the best." Reached into his pocket and pulled out the titanium pen, the one that had destroyed his deck. I have been carrying this for 6 months. It became a reminder of my failure, of my arrogance. It does not have to be, Sarah said. It can be a reminder of a lesson learned, of understanding gained. That is more valuable than pride. Will you take it back? Sarah smiled slightly. No, keep it, but maybe think of it differently, not as a symbol of human superiority or your failure. Think of it as a symbol of what we can learn from each other. You have technology we could never have imagined, gravity manipulation, quantum matrices, beautiful, elegant solutions to problems we are still struggling with. We have something different, hard-won experience with a force that never gives up. She pulled another pen from her pocket, identical to the first. Together, maybe we can build something better than either of us could alone. Elegant structures that also survive the real world. Advanced technology that accounts for chaos. That would be worth building. Looked at the pen in his hand, then at Sarah. I would like that, he said. I would like to work together. Then let us start, Sarah said. Over the following months, human engineers spread across the galaxy. They were not conquerors. They were not merchants selling expensive solutions. They were consultants, teachers, partners. They worked alongside alien engineers, sharing knowledge, learning in return. On the Celestial Harmony, human and engineers worked together to redesign the adaptive gravity deck. The new version used the same elegant quantum matrices for gravity control, but the deck surface itself was replaced with human-designed impact-resistant composites. The system was heavier, less efficient, but it worked. More importantly, it survived testing. They dropped tools on it, heavy tools, sharp tools, objects that would have shattered the original design. The new deck held. On low-gravity stations, human engineers introduced the concept of drop testing. It seemed strange to species that rarely experienced dangerous falls, but the tests revealed problems. Transparent panels that looked strong shattered under impact, floor plates that seemed adequate buckled under sudden stress, cargo restraints that were rated for their weight loads failed when those loads shifted suddenly. Slowly, standards changed. New materials were developed that combined alien elegance with human durability. Structures were redesigned to handle both static beauty and dynamic chaos. Safety protocols were written that assumed accidents would happen, because accidents always happened eventually. The work was not just technical, it was cultural. Engineers from low-gravity worlds had to learn to think about falling as a constant threat, not a rare occurrence. Engineers from high-gravity worlds had to understand that strength alone was not enough if the strength was only in one direction. Everyone had to accept that the universe did not care about their assumptions, and reality would test every design eventually. There were successes and failures. A redesigned cargo bay on a mining station successfully contained a dropped container that would have destroyed the old design. But a retrofit on a diplomatic station was incomplete when a pressure seal failed during testing. No one died, but it was a reminder that learning was ongoing. Sarah found herself traveling constantly. Mars to the home moon to the heavy worlds to dozens of stations and vessels in between. She gave presentations, reviewed designs, consulted on problems. She was tired, but it was good work, important work. One day, nearly a year after the summit, she received a message from Ambassador. He wanted to show her something. She took a transport to his location, a newly constructed station in neutral space. Met her at the docking port. He looked different, Sarah thought, more confident but also more humble. The arrogance she had seen at the first conference was gone. Doctor, he said, greeting her with a gesture of respect that his species used for honored guests. Thank you for coming. I wanted you to see this. He led her through the station corridors. The station was beautiful, with the flowing lines and elegant architecture that design was famous for. But Sarah noticed other things too. The deck plates were thicker than pure aesthetics required. The transparent panels had subtle reinforcement patterns. Equipment was secured with redundant restraints. They reached a large chamber at the station's heart. Inside was a new adaptive gravity deck, much larger than the prototype that had failed. Engineers from multiple species worked around it, making final adjustments. "This is the Mark 7, said proudly. "The seventh generation of design. Each generation learned from the previous. Each incorporated more human principles alongside technology. This one, we believe, is ready." "Ready for what?" Sarah asked. "Full testing. Real-world conditions. We want to demonstrate that we have learned the lessons, that we can build technology that is both advanced and reliable, that combines the best of both our approaches." Walked onto the deck and gestured for Sarah to join him. She stepped onto the smooth surface. It felt solid under her feet, stable. "Watch," said. He activated the system. The gravity shifted smoothly from 1G to 0.5 G. Sarah felt herself become lighter, then up to 1.5 G heavier. The transitions were seamless, just like the original prototype. "Now the real test," said. He reached into his coat and pulled out a titanium pen. Sarah's pen, the one that had destroyed the first deck. "I have kept this all this time. I think it is time to see if we have truly learned." He set the deck to 0.5 G, his comfortable home gravity. Then he tossed the pen into the air. It rose slowly, tumbling gently. "Rapid transition," said calmly, 2.5 G. The gravity field jumped. The pen dropped like a stone, just as it had before. It struck the deck with the same sharp sound. But the deck held. No cracks appeared. No alarm sounded. The surface absorbed the impact, distributed the force, and remained intact. Bent and picked up the pen. Both the pen and the deck were undamaged. He held up the pen, and Sarah saw that he was smiling. Not the arrogant smile from before, but something genuine. "We did it," he said. "We combined your impact resistance with our gravity control. We built something that is both elegant and tough, both advanced and reliable." Sarah smiled back. "That is good engineering, real engineering, not just solving the easy problems, but solving the hard ones too." Other engineers gathered around, congratulating and his team. Representatives from various species examined the deck, running their own tests, verifying the results. It was a triumph, but a different kind than had originally sought. Not a triumph of one species over others, but a triumph of cooperation and learning. That evening held a small celebration. The engineering teams gathered in a common area, sharing food and drink from their various cultures. Sarah found herself standing with and several other senior engineers, talking about future projects. "We need to establish permanent working groups," an engineer was saying. "Ongoing collaboration between our species, not just for gravity systems, but for all engineering disciplines. We all have blind spots. We all have assumptions we don't know we are making." "Agreed," said an engineer. Her voice was soft but firm. "My people have much to learn about durability, but perhaps we have things to teach as well. Our efficiency, our material science, our understanding of minimal structures." "That is the goal," Sarah said. "Not replacing what works, but enhancing it. Learning from each other's strengths to cover each other's weaknesses." Raised his glass, a gesture humans had taught him. "A toast," he said, "to lessons learned, to knowledge shared, to engineering that serves all species." Everyone raised their glasses and drank. Later, as the celebration wound down, walked Sarah back to her quarters. They passed through corridors where workers were installing plaques on the walls. Sarah stopped to read one. The plaque showed an engraved image of a simple titanium pen. Below it, words were written in multiple languages. "What falls matters, in memory of lessons learned through failure and cooperation, dedicated to the principle that good engineering accounts for reality, not just theory. Established year 2287, Galactic Standard." "We are placing these throughout the station," explained. "A reminder to everyone who works here, engineers, technicians, maintenance crews, to never forget that the universe tests our assumptions constantly, to always design for chaos, not just ideal conditions. Sarah reached out and touched the plaque gently. "This is good," she said quietly. "This is important." "It was your idea originally," said. "You suggested it at the summit, a marker, a reminder. We adopted it eagerly. Many stations are now installing similar plaques. It has become a symbol of the new engineering philosophy." They continued walking. After a moment, spoke again. "I have been thinking about that first conference, when you dropped your pen on the stage. You smiled when you left. A small smile. I remember wondering why." "You caught that?" Sarah asked, surprised. "I did. I thought at the time you were simply maintaining dignity in defeat. But now I wonder if you knew, if you understood what that pen would teach us." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "I knew what it represented," she said finally. "I knew it was built to survive impacts that would destroy most alien tools. I knew it demonstrated a fundamental difference in engineering philosophy. Did I know you would drop it and break your deck? No, I could not have predicted that. But I hoped that someday, somehow, you would understand why we build things the way we do. Why we assume everything will fall, everything will break, everything will fail eventually. And why we design for that reality." "That is a dark view of the universe," observed. "Maybe," Sarah agreed. "Or maybe it is honest. The universe has rules, physics has laws, gravity pulls, objects fall, energy must go somewhere. You can wish those things were different or you can design for them. Humans learn to design for them." They reached Sarah's quarters, paused at the door. "Will you be staying for the full operational testing?" he asked. "It will take several weeks. We want to put the deck through every possible scenario before we certify it for general use." "I will stay as long as you need me," Sarah said. "This work is important, making sure different species can live and work together safely, making sure the mistakes of the past do not repeat. That is worth my time." "Thank you," said, and he meant it deeply. Sarah entered her quarters and sat down at her desk. She pulled out her tablet and made notes about the day's events, the successful test, the cooperative atmosphere, the plaques being installed throughout the station. She thought about how far things had come in just 1 year, from mockery and arrogance to respect and cooperation, from deadly failures to successful innovations, from species working separately to species working together. It had started with a pen, a simple titanium pen that weighed 0.3 kilograms, a pen designed to survive being dropped on a 1G world where everything that falls hits hard. Sarah reached into her bag and pulled out another pen, identical to all the others. She held it in her hand, feeling its weight, its solid construction. Such a small thing, such a simple tool, but it had changed everything. She set the pen on her desk and it rolled slightly before settling. On Earth, if she dropped it, it would fall. It would hit. And it would survive because that was what it was built to do. That was what all human tools were built to do. Survive reality. Survive chaos. Survive the constant test of a universe that pulled everything down and made everything that fell matter. Sarah looked at the pen and smiled. Then she picked it up and went back to work. There were still designs to review, standards to establish, engineers to teach. The work was not done. It was never done. Because the universe kept testing, and good engineering meant always being ready for the next test. Outside her window, the stars shone cold and bright. Ships moved between them, carrying people and cargo and dreams. Some of those ships were now built with human principles, designed to survive not just the void of space, but the reality of accidents and chaos and things falling when they should not. It was better that way, safer, more honest. The pen on Sarah's desk caught the light, its titanium surface gleaming. A reminder, a symbol, a lesson learned the hard way and shared freely so others would not have to pay the same price. What falls matters. And now, finally, the galaxy understood why.